I'd like to take a moment to share with you a fun conversation that I had with a new client. It's my hope that what I shared with him is a help to you the way it was to him. He is 28 years old. He has one child who is 2 years old. He came to me and said, Doc, 8 months ago, I came out of a 4-year relationship with the mother of my 2-year-old son. And they both realized that they were too young and too immature and had more growing to do in order to be in a serious relationship, and mutually decided to part ways. I said, okay. He said to me, he said, Doc, I know that she still loves me because she has said such, that she still loves me, and I absolutely still love her. We've expressed this to one another. He said, but I started following your work about a month ago and found myself in a bind and found your work at the right time, the exact right time, regarding this bind that I'm in. I said, what's going on? He said, well, about 4 months ago, I met a lady at work that I'm very interested in. And we went out about 3 times. We went on 3 different dates. And by date number 2, things had escalated really quickly. So what do you mean by escalated? He said, well, we had sex on the second date. And I really do like this lady. I think she is perfect for me. We get along really well. It's great chemistry. And not only do I think I like her, I think I love her. I said, really? He said, yeah. He said, I do. He said, she just seems to be a very good fit for me. I said, well, how do you know it's love? He said, well, because of how she makes me feel. She makes me feel heard. She makes me feel seen. As a man, she makes me feel respected. And we just clicked. I said, okay, so where's the problem? He said, well, the problem is I do believe that I love my ex. We share a child with one another. We get along really, really well. I don't know if she's dating anyone. And I am in a conflict because I really believe that I love 2 people. And he said, I don't know if you've ever been asked this question before, but can you love 2 people? I said, well, it's a very interesting question. I said, but let's just backtrack really quickly before I answer it, because I do have an answer. I said, so things escalated really quickly with the lady that you met at work, and now you think you love her. Is that correct? He said, yes, sir. And I said, and this is based on the fact that you guys just clicked because of how she makes you feel, seen, heard, etc. Correct? He said, yes, sir. I said, your ex doesn't make you feel seen, heard, and you guys didn't click? He said, no, she makes me feel seen. She makes me feel heard. We click as well. He said, Doc, I'm just going back and forth in my mind because it really feels weird and odd to me that both of them are really solid women, and I feel like I love them both. I said, okay, I wanted to just make sure I got some clarity to that. I said, so the answer to your question, can you love 2 people at once? The answer is yes. He said, really? I said, yes, sir, it is. He started to chuckle and said, Doc, I didn't expect you to say that. I said, well, let me finish the answer. The answer is yes, because love is a choice. Love is not a feeling. And the reason why people are confused by this question is because they answer this question with the answer or the thought that love is a feeling. If love is a feeling, then yes, you can still love 2 people, but it's going to be based on feeling. But love is a choice. And because love is a choice, you can choose to love and engage 2 people. You absolutely can. Now, the real and better question, sir, is this. Is it healthy to make this choice? He said, okay. I got it, Doc. I said, of course, I'm going to give you an analogy. Let's just make this make sense. I said, have you ever purchased a car? He said, I have. I said, how many? He said, 2. I said, what types of cars? He said, well, I purchased a new car and I've also purchased a used car. I sold my new car, but I've also purchased a used car. I said, perfect. I said, sir, a lot of people don't like when I use car analogies, but I'll tell you why I use car analogies. I use car analogies because it helps us really put things like death in perspective. No, this doesn't objectify people to cars. I mean, there's always somebody in the comment section somewhere who thinks that for some odd reason. But it helps us to really understand sometimes the decision-making process that we oftentimes have to go through in our lives, and even the decision-making process that we go through when we're evaluating other things and other people. I said there are 4 great challenges with purchasing a car. Number 1, when you go to a car lot and you don't have an idea of what you want, you're going to have some problems. Everything's going to look interesting. If you go to a car lot, everything looks interesting. Everything looks great. And you will typically leave that lot with something that impressed you instead of something you really want. I said, and this is what it looks like when we engage people, but we don't have an idea of our values. We don't understand our values before we pursue people. We don't understand our values before we engage people. And I said, sir, I question if you know your values, because all you've said to me about how this new lady makes you feel in terms of you loving her is how she makes you feel and how you click. You didn't say anything about her values. You didn't say anything about your values, which leads me to believe you're making a decision based on how you feel, and your feelings will fool you and turn around and make a fool out of you. I said, so anytime you go to a car lot and you purchase a car and you don't have an idea of what you want, you're going to walk away from that car lot impressed with something that you purchased, and it's going to impress you because you purchased it, but it doesn't necessarily mean it's what you want or even what you need for that matter. I said, does that make sense? He said, yes, sir, it does. I said, it leads me to the second challenge of purchasing a car. I said, when you purchase a car and you go to a lot financially unprepared to purchase what you want, you're going to end up in a lot of trouble. I said, and this isn't just about money. This is just about your priorities. I said, sir, how is your career going? He said, it's struggling. I said, what do you mean? He said, I'm struggling to get it off the ground. I do have a college degree. I'm thinking about going back to get a master's because it's been quite a few years since I've been able to land a job in my career field or my degree field, and I'm struggling. I said, and how old is your daughter again? He said, 2. I said, do you get where I'm going? He said, not really. I said, sir, is it wise right now that you're trying to purchase a car, but you're not prepared for one? Put his head down. You saw a tear start to well up in his eye. I said, sir, I'm not trying to offend you. I said, but the reality is you're only 28 years old. You're trying to purchase a car when really you probably should be focusing on your career and your little girl or your son. Would you not agree with that? He said, I would. I said, so then that's the problem. People go to car lots financially unprepared, but really they go unprepared from a priority standpoint. And because they end up driving off with something that they really ain't ready to handle. I said, sir, you should be focusing on your son and your career right now. You should be focusing on the things, the 2 most important things in your life right now that are not in order, that are going to ensure that once you find the one, you're going to be able to maintain what you have. Does that make sense? He said, yes, sir, it does. See, it leads me to number 3. I said, one of the third and most dangerous things that comes to purchasing a car is when you show up at the lot and you do a test drive. I said, it's not my job, sir, to tell people how soon to have sex when you meet someone. That ain't my business. It's not my job to tell a grown person how to behave when they engage people. Not my business. Grown people make grown decisions and have to live with grown consequences. I said, but the reality is this. If you drive a car you really like, chances are your decision to purchase that car is going to be heavily weighed on how that car felt when you drove it. I said, sir, it ain't accidental that most car dealers want you to take a test drive, especially if you seem to really like a car. You know why? He said, yeah, because if I drive it and I like it, I'm more likely to buy it. I said, sir, you just met her 4 months ago. You just came out of a relationship, a 4-year relationship about 8 months ago. And here you are already test driving a new car. I said, sir, I'm not saying that this new woman is not great. I'm not saying that she's not a great fit. I can't tell one way or the other because all you've told me about her is how she makes you feel. I don't know if she is or not. I said, but one thing that I can tell you, every brand new car you drive, it can be a Kia or it can be a Mercedes. Anytime you jump inside of a brand new car, it always feels what? He said, it always feels good. I said, sir, it takes strength, discipline, it takes maturity, and frankly, it takes healing to step back and evaluate a car for what it is after you've already test drove it. I said, sir, you've test drove this car. You've test drove it. Now I need you to pause and take a step back and evaluate the car absent of the experience that you had with that car. Does that make sense at all? He said, it does. I said, I need you to think about more than how the car felt and more about the great time you had with the car. He started to chuckle at this point. Just a range of emotions. Great young man. He started to chuckle about it. I said, I need you to think about more than how the car felt and the experience that you had with the car on that night. I said, I need you to think about some other things like the maintenance. How much the oil change going to cost? The tires, taxes, insurance. I said, sir, it's one thing to test drive a car. It's another thing to count the cost of that car before you test drive it, so that the last thing that you have left to do after that car has checked all of the boxes is then to drive it, if that's what you choose to do. I said, that leads me to number 4. I said, the 4th challenging thing that people experience when it comes to purchasing a car is the inability to make a decision. I said to him, I said, sir, it's not abnormal to like more than one car. I know you asked me, sir, or you said, Doc, rather, is it possible to love two people at once? My answer is yes, because love is a choice and people can choose by their actions to engage more than one person. Does it make it right? No. Does it make it healthy? No. I said, but understand this. It's not abnormal to like more than one car. It is abnormal. It is abnormal to purchase every single car you like. I said, and even if you've got the money, let's say you go to the car lot and you can afford 4 cars at one time and you drive off with 4 cars. I said, sir, you could be a multimillionaire and be able to afford those cars. But the reality is you still going to have to pay taxes on all of them. You're still going to have to carry maintenance on all of them. You're still going to have insurance on all of them. You're still going to have somewhere to put all of them. I said, sir, even if you can afford to do so, it's going to cost you. And not only is it going to cost you, when we don't make decisions or have the inability to make a decision, our inability to make a decision is a decision that will cost us. I said, sir, the issue is with the choices that you're making. Now you've driven 2 cars. One car you've driven longer than the other. But now you've driven 2 cars and you believe you love them both. When I'm here to suggest to you that maybe, just maybe, you showed up at this new car lot for this new experience that you experienced 4 months ago. You showed up at this new car lot. Number one, you went to that lot without an idea of what you wanted. So you had no idea. You did not set no priorities. You didn't identify your values. And so here you are on a car lot 4 months ago after getting off of a 4-year car lot. And you think that you just have the best deal in the world, which leads me to number 2. You not only did that, but you went unprepared. Your priorities aren't together. You're focused more on getting a new car than you are your career and your son. And then that leads us to 3, that not only is that the case, you test drove the car that you can't really afford. You test drove a car and now you think the car is wonderful because of how it felt. And then ultimately leads us to number 4, sir. I said, now you're struggling to make a decision because you did not have your priorities and other things in place. I said, so is it possible to love more than one person at a time? Yes. Is it healthy? No. And you can fix it by making sure you get your priorities in order and recognize what it is that you're doing at any given time. I said, sir, this is what makes self-awareness so important. We got to be honest about who we are, where we are, and what we're doing at any given time. Great conversation with a great young man. He's decided to step back from the lady that he met 4 months ago and to really try to work on himself. And I'm very proud of him and excited to be a part of his journey. I hope this story made sense. If it did, type church in the comments with 3 R's. And then remember, you've got 2 jobs. 1, be better today than what you were yesterday. And 2, don't forget what I told you.
The very next logical step after you heal is to let it go. I can't tell you the number of people in this space who struggle with holding on to things. People are mad at 55 over what happened to them in the breakup at 21. Those folks have gotten married, they've moved on, they've got a family. They ain't even thinking about you like that. And so once you heal mentally, emotionally, spiritually, physically, and financially, the next logical step is to learn how to let go. What are we letting go? We're letting go of anything that doesn't serve us from the past, that's going to impact us in the present and might mess up our future. So if you haven't already, I need you to grab a copy of Let It Go. It's a powerful book, and it reminds us that when we learn how to let go, we can learn how to receive the best days of our life.
I hope this made sense. If it did, I want you to type church in the comments with 3 R's. And then I want you to remember you've got 2 jobs. 1, be better today than what you were yesterday. And 2, don't forget what I told you.